The year is 421 in the Salsario calendar. In the kingdom of Granville, humanity is on the brink of extinction, with only a few soldiers remaining who, to make matters worse, are being attacked by colossal dragons that, with a powerful blast of fire, destroyed the kingdom's gate, allowing the monsters to invade at full force. An inescapable fate approaches, and the countdown to humanity's extinction is coming to an end. Many soldiers are injured, but Will guarantees that he will heal everyone as quickly as possible. His colleague tells him to run, since the gates are falling and it is far too dangerous for a healer of his level. However, the MC shouts that he cannot let anyone die, and that, in his presence, he will not allow humans to be annihilated. That is because, in his memories, a woman said that people's lives were in his hands, and that, from that moment on, he would be the greatest healer of all. Suddenly, a soldier calls out to Will and warns that the general is gravely wounded. The man lays the officer down, and immediately the MC begins to heal him with all his power, which grows more and more intense, to the point of completely regenerating the general's lost arm. After finishing the healing, Jason wakes up and all the soldiers celebrate. Will tells them not to worry, since he will always heal them no matter how severe the injury. But the general, after seeing that his hand has been regenerated, punches the MC in the face and says he should not have done that. Everyone is confused about why the general attacked out of nowhere, but he shouts for them to shut up, draws his sword, and drives it into Will's shoulder. Moreover, he yells that that damn arm keeps dragging him to his death and asks if he has any idea of the terror of the front lines, since a healer stays in the comfort of the rear. He states that every time he is about to meet his end, the MC keeps restoring the damn arm and points out that no one wants to fight anymore. Will does not accept this, but when he looks at the wounded, he realizes that no one has any motivation left to fight. He cannot believe that he always wanted to save everyone, but that it was all in vain, and this leaves him in shock. Jason pulls the sword out of his shoulder and says that humanity is already doomed and that if he wants to fight, then Will should fight alone. The MC asks him to wait, since healers cannot use attack magic and without the general, everyone will be defenseless. However, it is useless as the general does not listen and, amid the colossal attacks of the dragons, a giant rock falls on top of Jason. Taking his life, Will finds himself in a difficult situation and finally understands how someone feels when facing such a powerful monster. He finally realizes that he only ever watched from the rear and that all his study of healing magic was a waste, even though he was a talented healer and even though everyone called him the greatest healer of all. In the end, it was useless. He is frustrated for not being able to fight with his own hands and charges at the dragon, wishing only that he could return to the day of his enrollment, since this time, he could do things differently. After all this, he opens his eyes and is confused about where he is. He looks at the small table in his room and notices the enrollment guide, meaning only one thing. His greatest shock comes when he looks at himself in the mirror. Immediately, he runs outside and sees a crowd of people, which is exactly what happened 5 years ago. He is still confused, since he thought he had been killed by a dragon and cannot understand how he is 1 week before his enrollment at High League Academy. He believes that perhaps his last wish was truly granted and knows exactly what he needs to do, which is to enroll at Schwartz Academy, the Academy of Offensive Magic. Healers cannot use attack magic. That is the common belief for any mage, and he believes he must break that preconceived notion. He knows he will have to overcome countless barriers, but he has the memories of his past life and the healing magic he mastered. He is determined to fight with his own hands to save the world. First, he will need to enter the best school in the world to learn attack magic. As far as he knows, the education system at Schwartz Academy is elite and can turn any mage into a frontline combatant. He had even met a skilled girl who graduated from that academy. He knows that the system of that school is strict and does not remember if there are precedents for a healer to enroll in that place, so he does not know what he will do. In short, everything comes down to money, since, being a famous school, the nobles always place their children there. Will laments not having managed to bring his money with him, but he remembers that this same money was useless in the face of humanity's extinction and knew that, even if he worked as a healer, he would not gather enough money until enrollment. At that moment, someone enters his room asking if he is still awake. He realizes it is his sister Ashley, and becomes aware that she is still alive. At that moment in the past, she asks if something happened since his eye is tearing up, and he replies that nothing happened since dust got into his eye. His sister finds that funny, and the MC reflects that, in this life, he will be able to avoid the tragedy that will happen to her, and his healing magic should be enough for that. He realizes that he will be able to save the people he failed to save before and gives thanks. Since he had that idea thanks to her, but Ashley becomes confused, since she does not know what he is talking about. As for the Alliance of Magic Academies, it is an organization that unites all the magic academies of the kingdom. At that time, the president of the alliance was also serving as the academy's director. However, there was a period when the president almost never appeared for a certain reason. At the president's house, Marie, who is his granddaughter, was bedridden and sick, and Alnalam, who is the president of the Alliance of Magic Academies, did not leave her side. He laments that the healer of that day was not good enough and promises that he will find someone capable. During that period, the president was completely occupied taking care of his sick granddaughter. But since, at that time, there was no cure, she ended up passing away. However, that happened in his last timeline. The MC appears at the president's bedroom window, and the old man asks if he happens to be Will, the scholarship student from Heilig. The MC is surprised that the director knows that. Alnalam says that the boy is quite famous for his talent in healing, but admits that he did not know he was a child who sneaked into other people's windows. The MC laughs at that, since he cannot be that reckless, because he has already died once, and confidently says that he can cure Marie. The president becomes serious and asks what his intentions are, and he replies that he can talk about that later, since he first wants permission to treat her, because the disease has progressed more than he imagined. The old man stares seriously and asks him to show what he is capable of. Will takes a deep breath and sits down beside the bed. He also notices that the president's gaze has become intense, as if he would kill him instantly if he made a single wrong move. The MC tries to concentrate and, upon taking the girl's hand, begins to use his healing magic. He knows that his mana capacity decreased when he regressed, but he still remembers the formulas of healing magic. The girl's disease is called Zora's disease. The cure was not supposed to be invented for another 2 years, but he knows he can do it. Suddenly, Marie opens her eyes, and Will feels happy, saying that everything will be fine, but warns that her stamina is exhausted and therefore she must rest in the girl's eyes. The MC is a charming prince, which is enough to leave her dying of embarrassment. Because of that, she turns away, saying yes. The president asks if she is really well, and the girl, happy, replies that she is, and that she does not even remember the last time she felt so light. The old man is pleased to hear that and says he is relieved. After that, he thanks the MC and says that he can ask for anything he wants. Will thanks him, and says that the request is not difficult. He explains that he has great skill with healing magic, but he no longer wants to learn about healing. Therefore, he politely asks him to enroll him in Schwartz Academy. Alnalam asks if he understands the meaning of placing such a talented healer in an offensive magic academy. Will replies that he is aware, and the old man, seeing how confident the boy is, stands up and says that he will use the authority he has to do so and immediately approves his enrollment. Elsewhere, a man is sitting reading the resume and asks himself whether a wimpy healer like Will can really handle the pressure of Schwartz Academy. The day of the ceremony arrives and the president prepares his speech. Schwartz Academy specializes in offensive magic and has all kinds of facilities. In addition to possessing a huge library, it also has influential students for the school, which receives various forms of support. Basically, there is no better institution to learn offensive magic. No healer has ever enrolled in that place, but the MC knows that to change the fate of the world, he needs to give his best. However, after classes begin, he prepares to cast a spell at the dummy and after activating his spell, fails completely. The professor warns that he will not be allowed to attend class until he can hit the target. The MC asks if he cannot be taught how to do it, since he will not know how to practice if he does not know the theory. The professor replies that teaching a healer is a waste of time. At that moment, another student summons a fireball and, excited, hits Will in the back, causing him to fall to the ground without understanding what the hell just happened. The boys mock him since he failed to dodge a mere spell and say that it is his own fault for being hit so easily. The professor says they are right and tells the MC to ask the Healers Academy to accept him back. Ulpies also mocks him, telling him to return to the kind-hearted healers. After all that, later at night, The MC takes a deep breath and reflects that he had already imagined it would not be easy. After all, the reason is that both healing magic and offensive magic use mana, the power of the spirit. Whether mana is static or dynamic depends on the nature of the mage. Using dynamic mana to create explosions is what defines offensive magic. Healers, on the other hand, possess only static mana, so they cannot use offensive magic. Even so, he knows that Academy is elite and therefore believes there must be a method to form dynamic mana. Somehow he knows that if he learns mana manipulation, he will be able to convert his static mana into dynamic mana. But he never imagined he would even be prevented from attending classes. After thinking about it, he stands up, as he remembered his old friend who perfected herself at that academy. He tries to think of a way to sneak into the library, since he does not have permission to enter. At that moment, someone calls his attention for being outside at that hour and, after turning around to apologize, Will is startled because standing in front of him is Veronica, his friend from the past. He does not hide his surprise. After all, the two fought together on the same battlefield, and she was a first-class mage. He was even by her side in her final moments. He imagines that the moment is nostalgic until he is startled by the girl pointing her sword at him. She says she saw a suspicious student, so it is only natural to stay on guard, and asks what he is up to or if, by any chance, he is eager to learn. Will is aware that one attack from her means instant death and, therefore, he replies that he is only eager for classes. She says that is fine, and the MC asks if her name is Veronica. She confirms it but questions whether that is how he addresses a professor. He does not understand what she means, since in his past life they did not have such a big age difference, and asks if she really is a professor. Veronica confirms and says she skipped several grades, becoming a professor immediately from that year onward. He says he understands and is not even surprised since she is extremely talented, and he realizes that this is a golden opportunity since she could teach offensive magic. Will says he wants to attend her class, and asks how to enroll. She apologizes since she does not have her own class because she skipped many grades, so that year she was assigned as an assistant to answer students' questions. But she admits she finds it strange since for some reason no one ever asks anything. The MC can even imagine why, but he knows this is a perfect opportunity and asks to ask a question. Veronica says that is not a problem since it is her job to answer. Will go straight to the point and asks what a healer should do if he wanted to learn offensive magic. She changes her gaze since she was finding his mana flow strange, and says that she finally understood who the student everyone has been talking about is. He asks if she already knew that, and she replies that a healer learning offensive magic is rare, and that she has never heard of one. The MC comments that he is sure there is a method capable of transforming dynamic mana. She says that she can teach him this method, but reveals that even by doing so, it will be impossible for him to use offensive magic. Will does not understand why that is, and she explains that he possesses too much static mana, so even if he forces dynamic mana, it would simply dissolve into the static mana. He does not believe that there is simply no way for a healer to use offensive magic, but she says she has no idea of anyone who knows how. Will becomes worried since his plan backfired, but he knows he cannot give up and therefore thanks her for the help and says he will think about it on his own. However, as he was leaving, she calls his attention since she had not finished speaking, and says that there is a way for a healer to become a battle mage. He does not understand what that means, and Veronica says that her sword is made of iron and can be used to defeat enemies, just as a chair is made of wood and can be used for sitting. However, if you swing the chair too much or throw it at someone, it will easily knock the person down. The MC is startled by the colossal strength she has even with thin arms. Veronica finishes by saying that everything depends on how a person uses things, and the same applies to her hand. She touches his face, giving him a light tap. He becomes embarrassed by that until she flicks him with her finger, which is the second variation of what she could do with her hand. She says that everything comes down to application and that anything can become a weapon depending on how it is used. He understands and asks if she is saying to use healing magic to attack. She is happy that he understood so quickly, and Will reflects that he had never considered something like that. She explains that this is because battle mages are not interested in healing and vice versa. However, with him, it is different since he is already an irregularity just by enrolling in an academy of offensive magic, and his mana is not that of a pure healer. He finds this strange since he had never noticed and wonders if this change happened because of the regression. She tells him to be aware of that since he must embrace the fury within him because if he masters healing magic, he will be able to crush his enemies. After that, the next day, the MC keeps thinking about everything he talked about with Veronica and how it opened his eyes. Besides that, he also realized that she did not reject the fact that he is a healer, and strangely, the girl already had a theory ready linking healing magic to offensive magic. Suddenly, the professor calls the MC and says they will talk about unknown simulated battles and that he will participate, and tells him to get beaten as little as possible since you reap what you sow. The professor smiles and says that he will fight. Ulpus finds this trap far too obvious and knows that the blonde boy is from a famous noble family who always walks around with lackeys. Basically, the boy is taking advantage of his family's name to pretend to be a mage. Ulpus starts mocking and asks if he will cry after being beaten. Will gets irritated by that personality and admits that in his past life, he would not have cared, but this time, reality is different. He decides to put his theory into practice and calls the professor. Bode warns that he cannot give up, but the MC just says that he has a proposal to make. First of all, if he loses the fight, he will leave the Schwartz Academy. The professor finds the idea interesting, but the MC says that if he wins, he must be allowed to attend classes regularly. Bode finds this absurd, and the blonde boy bursts into laughter when he sees that there is a student deluding himself with something impossible. He also says that he is eager to break a broken toy. The professor knows that discussing hypotheses will be a waste of time and agrees to the proposal. He also asks both sides to take their positions and shouts to begin. Ulpus starts concentrating to invoke his ability, and tells them to behold his blade creation magic. He says that and fires countless flaming blades. Will also prepares himself and, activating his healing magic, begins to dodge at an absurd speed that leaves Ulpus shocked. Unable to understand how that is possible, the MC knows that the true essence of his healing magic is the manipulation of life. He correctly manipulates vital activity and maximizes the natural power of healing to recover the target. Ulpus shouts at him not to get cocky just because he got lucky, but will waste no time and activates his physical enhancement. He grabs a dagger that was coming toward him and starts deflecting all the blades. Then he says that it was exactly what he needed and tells him to get ready, since he is going to use that borrowed weapon. The students watching are confused, since they did not know that a healer could use offensive magic. The MC imagines that he did not use offensive magic apparently, but no one can tell the difference. Ulpus gets furious and summons even more blades with the power he has and attacks, guaranteeing that there is no way he can lose to a healer. Will keeps deflecting all the weapons and, after destroying them all, the blonde gets angry and creates only one dagger, but gigantic. The MC realizes that the guy has solid control over his unique magic. In fact, Ulpus does, and even adds a rotation to his attack which comes straight at the MC. However, he calmly blocks it with his dagger. Ulpus becomes furious at what he is seeing and screams, trying to put in more strength. Will notices that he will have to add a little more physical enhancement and, with that, deflects the giant dagger which falls without causing any damage. In addition, he appears behind his opponent, warning that he will heal him properly after this attack and, ready to win, is startled since out of nowhere, a stone wall is formed in front of him. The one responsible was the professor, who orders them to step back as they have other fights to carry out. The MC does not like that at all, but knows it was a victory and, because of that, asks if he will be allowed to attend regular classes. Beck, even though he does not like it, replies that he will thanks him for that and leaves. He imagines that the feeling he had came from his offensive magic and that it was better than he thought. All of this thanks to Professor Veronica, since she illuminated his path so he could become a battle mage. Meanwhile, Ulpus, still on the ground, asks the professor if by any chance what happened was an accident, since he does not want to have to report every detail to his father. Then he asks if by any chance he understands what he means. The professor replies that he does, since they cannot have a healer acting arrogantly at that academy. After that, everyone goes to the classroom. Will is happy, since he will finally be able to learn everything about offensive magic. The professor finally enters the room and begins by saying that they will start the class on creating magical tools. The MC feels nostalgic, since this type of class also existed at the Healer Academy. Beck explains that on that day they will make ice bombs. He will distribute the materials according to the instructions when infusing mana. The MC reflects that, in his past life, he only crafted potions and healing items, but now it is different. Most things will require dynamic mana and he hopes he can handle it without too many problems. He notices that in the bag, there is a fragment of the ice golem and powdered branch of the flame tree. He holds the ice and begins to read about the procedures, until he notices something strange about the item. Immediately, he activates his physical enhancement and throws the stone far away, which causes a massive explosion, as if it were a time bomb. At the site of the explosion, a giant block of ice materializes, and the professor shouts at the MC, wanting to know what he is doing. He defends himself since the item activated on its own, but even so, his grade is reduced. All the students mock him for it, as does Ulpus, who makes it clear that he had a hand in what happened the next day. The class is about magical creatures. He keeps looking at the salamander, and the professor tells those with low grades to sit in the front to pay attention. Will knows that it is a problem to stay so close to a salamander. No sooner does he say that, than he receives a burst of fire, which he blocks with a pan since he anticipated something like that. Beck questions why he is holding a cauldron. He replies that he thought it was necessary, but it ends up being the confiscated item. The MC finally understands how things are going to work, and has already realized that that school has no intention whatsoever of letting him learn. He can only think about how he will deal with this. At his side, a girl watches everything he is going through. After that, the harassment continued, with the blonde guy always bothering him. The professor also gave problems he had not even learned yet, and even outside the classroom. He had headaches with people throwing trash in front of his room. Even the dorm supervisor was on his case, saying that he had misbehaved and, because of that, he would be left without dinner. He returns to his bed and finds it sad that everyone is hostile toward him and knows about the mountain of challenges still ahead of him. He tries to remain confident since he is making progress. And he fought with his own hands for the first time, and that fact makes him more excited, since he will definitely be able to become an offensive mage. Besides that, he also got a book, so he will be able to review that day's lessons. The next day, already in the classroom, he notices that the professor has not shown up. He also notices that there is only one girl in room with him. He concludes that there is no reason to stay there any longer and goes to talk to the girl. He asks if the class was probably changed, and she replies that maybe yes, and says that since Will was rejected by everyone, she imagined something like that would happen to her as well, and now they are excluded companions and should get along. The MC realizes that she is a bit negative and that her words also have thorns, but in any case he says that he is happy to make a new friend. She also greets him and asks them to be good friends and introduces herself as Erica Glenn. The MC says that he is making a friendship for the first time, and she comments that it is understandable, since a healer would certainly have problems at that academy. Besides that, she says she also does not have friends, and he finds it funny since they are both in the same boat. Will finds it incredible how strong the discrimination against healers is at that academy. And it makes him remember that in his past life he was recognized very quickly as the kingdom's healer, so he did not experience that kind of treatment. However, at the Offensive Magic Academy, prejudice is strong since even simply studying has been difficult. She calls his attention and asks why he decided to study at Schwartz. Will gets straight to the point and says that he realized that being born a healer is not an excuse to give up on dreams. She does not understand that very well, and he just says that he has some personal reasons and asks about her. The girl does not know what to say and replies that she is from a small, noble family from the provinces. But no male child was born in the family, and her parents became worried that the lineage would end, so she should focus on offensive magic in order, perhaps, to become the head of the family. The MC understands her situation, since graduating from Schwartz would indeed make that possible. She agrees, but explains that she has no talent for offensive magic, and not having friends only makes it worse. But she says that now she has a friend, and happily comments that she found someone who has more difficulties than she does, so she will not feel anxious if her grades are bad. He does not understand how she can say that with such a cheerful face, but he thanks her for her good intention. However, he turns around, since things may turn out very differently from what she imagines. Erica questions what he means by that, and he just asks them to first find the room where the class is actually taking place, and the two of them go outside. After a while, they finally find it and apologize, since they did not know the room had changed. Bode says that he does not want to hear about that and, taking advantage of the situation, tells them to solve the problem on the board. Erica is outraged, since they just arrived and there is no possibility that Will knows anything. On the other hand, he continues analyzing, and the professor says that if he gets it right, he will ignore the fact that he was late. If he gets it wrong, he will lose points. Ulpes takes the opportunity to mock him, saying that at this rate he will be failed in a short time. Will does not let himself be shaken, picks up the chalk and starts writing on the board, leaving everyone surprised since they do not know if he is guessing or something like that. He finishes his answer and asks the professor what he thinks. Beck simply cannot believe what he is seeing and, with no options, tells them to sit down since it is correct. Ulpies does not understand how this is possible, just like Erica, who, looking at Will, wonders how he managed to do it. After class, Erica cannot hold herself back and asks how he managed to solve the previous problem. He explains that it was basically an application found in the books and that he had studied it. She does not believe what she is hearing and asks if he really read the giant book by himself. The MC imagines that he read it for the first time the day before and that Schwartz's books are definitely worthy of being the best in the world. The book covered a wide range of knowledge efficiently and, even though he does not have magical aptitude, he has always been good at studying in his past life and that helped him understand offensive magic. He thinks about all of this since he stayed up late and is really enjoying offensive magic, but Erica does not hide her surprise since it is extremely difficult content and she believed he had abandoned his studies. That makes her question whether she will be the one to suffer bullying from now on and asks him not to leave her behind. Will tells her not to worry since he will teach her everything he understood. After all, they are friends. She cries with emotion and thanks him for that. Will is aware that he did not enter the school to make friends, but he believes that having Erica by his side is a good thing. She comments that the next class is basic offensive magic. He already imagines that it is exactly the class he used to fail, and that is why he was excluded from all classes. And he says that, unfortunately, he still cannot use basic offensive magic. However, he has an idea about that, and that is exactly where Erica comes in to help all the students go to the location, and Will imagines that there are basic offensive magic and unique magic. Basic offensive magic is magic built so that anyone can learn it. On the other hand, unique magic is something that only the specific mage can use. Even in that academy, there are classes to learn offensive magic or to refine one's unique magic. He knows that at least basic magic, he will be able to attend even knowing only healing magic. However, the first step is to use a basic offensive magic spell. The professor comments that he is doing well in theoretical classes but terribly in practical ones and warns that he will fail if he cannot use a basic offensive magic spell. He says he understands and takes his position since he will need to cast a fireball at the target. Beck says once again that if he does not do that, he will not be able to advance in any way. He says this and imagines that Will used healing magic in the previous battle and learned that this buff improves the bonus movements. On the other hand, if he cannot use basic offensive magic, he will no longer be able to attend classes. While thinking about this, he sees the MC smiling and cannot believe that the boy still has cards up his sleeve. His greatest surprise comes next when he sees him holding a fireball in his hand. Will feels pleased since apparently no one noticed. That is because moments earlier he asked Erica to create a fireball with basic offensive magic and infused it into the salamander's tail. His strategy is to keep healing the tail while holding it in his hand. She asks if it does not hurt and he replies that he is a healer, so it is nothing serious. She is surprised since she is aware that even for healers, this is something very difficult and she no longer even knows who he is back in the present. He continues with his strategy to make that flame look like a fireball and throws it at the target, successfully burning the dummy. The professor simply cannot believe what he is seeing and imagines that what he saw was indeed a basic offensive magic spell, and no longer knows whether Will can truly use that type of magic. Having no options, he says that he passed and everyone starts gossiping about it except Ulpis, who is furious. He goes to the classroom to complain. And the professor admits that he also does not know how it is possible for a healer to have used offensive magic. The blonde boy says he does not care about that anymore since he was challenged and therefore does not want a healer in the classroom, so he threatens that if he tells his father, he could completely dissolve that class. Beck panics at this and the boy says to use whatever methods he wants since he only wants Will out of his sight. The professor finds it problematic and knows that he runs the risk of being discovered since it is different from bullying. He knows that he needs to protect his position and thinks it is outrageous for a healer to act arrogantly. And he guarantees that he will not let a 15-year-old healer ruin his life and therefore he will take responsibility into his own hands. After class in the training field, the MC asks the teacher why he was called. Beck says that Will has been too confident lately. And that it was not a compliment. He points out that a healer cannot be so arrogant that he also missed several subjects and wants to know how he plans to make up for it. The MC realizes the headache he is going to have and replies that he learned the content with a classmate and believes there should be no problems. Beck says that a student does not decide that and that makeup classes will be mandatory. Having said that, he announces that there will be a simulated battle at that exact moment. Will cannot believe that the guy wants a teacher versus student battle. But Beck says he will give him an advantage since if he manages to land at least one hit, he will have passed the test, but warns that he cannot run away. The MC remains silent and teacher imagines that it is impossible for a healer's attacks to hit him and that, once he wins, he will show the overwhelming difference in power between them. The MC says he accepts and the teacher, without wasting time, begins using his magic. Will remembers that the teacher's ability creates stone walls and the ground, which barely begins to move, rises up, forcing him to dodge. However, even while dodging, he is startled since from the wall another attack emerges, almost hitting him this time. He becomes increasingly pressured and Beck asks what is wrong and if he is just going to keep dodging. He realizes that the teacher is using the existing ground to increase the speed of creation, but on the other hand, it is not so fast that he cannot dodge. He goes on the offensive this time and the teacher activates another magic, creating 2 stone walls in order to crush Will. However, he manages to dodge by jumping into the air and, full of confidence, attacks with everything he has. However, Beck creates a stone armor around his body to block the blow and then attacks by creating spikes from the ground. He laughs since someone so weak would never be able to break through his armor, which is as hard as iron. In addition, he points out that he has never heard of a healer using offensive magic. The MC takes a deep breath and says that through healing magic, he has deeply studied the human body. After all, the body cannot withstand its own power and, if released all at once, it can even break. Beck tries to say something, but Will interrupts him and warns that even if he removes the limiter to release more power, the body will not remain unharmed. However, since he is a healer, that is irrelevant. The teacher is startled by the power in front of him and points out that an ability like that will not be enough to break his iron armor. Will, excited, asks to test it and with his powerful punch without the limiter completely shatters the armor as well as breaking his opponent's face with a single blow. He warns that he should not decide a student's limits and is pleased for having received Veronica's idea to use healing magic to his advantage. Suddenly, the teacher regains consciousness and attacks with everything he has with the intent to kill. Will barely dodges and, when he looks ahead, realizes that Beck is extremely furious. The MC says that the deal was to pass the test if he landed one attack, but Beck tells him to shut up since there are no witnesses and creates another magic circle, attacking once again. Since it is unacceptable to admit he was hit by a healer, Will takes a deep breath and explains that releasing the limiter is not only for throwing punches. Then, with absurd speed, he leaps toward the teacher, who simply cannot believe how the MC approached so quickly, and also knows that his iron armor woven from the earth will not arrive in time, so all he can do is close his eyes. However, nothing happens and, when he opens them, he realizes that the MC's fist stopped before hitting him. However, the fist slowly approaches until it finally lands, and he does not understand it, since it feels like time is slowing down. Will continues his attack, and the pain remains constant at every moment. Beck concludes that what he is going through is many times worse than being hit normally and, moreover, he cannot endure it, but he also cannot escape or even express his pain. So all he wants is for it to end quickly. With that, the punch sends him flying, and the MC, smiling, welcomes him back and says that, for him, it was only an instant. The professor asks what happened and Will tells him to calm down, since he will explain it as a true professor should. He explains that at the moment the fist hit him, he cast a sensory enhancement spell, which is originally an ability used to heal people's eyes or ears, and since he has used it a lot to increase his reaction time, this time he cast it excessively on the professor. As a result, his senses became sharpened, making a second feel like an eternity. After this explanation, he places his hand on Beck's shoulder and asks if this time he passed the remedial class. The professor replies that yes. But before leaving, the MC says he has one more thing to tell him, since he even understands that it is difficult to eliminate deeply rooted discriminatory attitudes, but with his dreadful aura, he assures that if he continues interfering with his studies, he will show him what it truly means to feel pain. After all, he just wants to attend classes and does not want to bother anyone. With that said, and with a smile on his face, he asks if he will comply with this request. After that, still at the academy, Beck is walking and cannot understand what the hell the MC is, since he has never heard of a healer so offensively powerful. Moreover, the willpower he displayed even resembles killing intent. Ulpes sees the professor approaching and asks if Will's remedial class is already over and feels happy, since the boy is one step closer to expulsion. However, reality is different and Beck shouts at him to shut up and tells him to never mess with the MC again. He says he is telling him this for the boy's own good, since it is a mistake to think of Will only as a healer. The blonde boy says he does not want to hear that and asks if he forgot that he can report things to his father. The professor, impatient, tells him to go ahead, but says he does not believe much will happen, since if his parents were going to do something, there would be no need for a professor to intervene, and tells him to be careful about his future, since he will have many problems if he keeps being a troublemaker. He says that and leaves. Ulpes punches the wall, since he did not get what he wanted. A few days later, the MC finishes his reading and feels relieved, since the professor is cooperating and he also believes he said something to Ulpes. Thanks to that, he can focus on his classes. After all, to change the future of humanity's extinction, he needs to become much stronger. He knows that using healing magic to improve himself was a good idea, but he is basically just punching things with all his strength. Basically, sensory enhancement is only good for intimidation, so he has a new path to follow. That is why he goes to meet Veronica and asks what she thinks about it. She asks to say one thing first and congratulates him, since he has been the talk of the moment among the teachers and since it is a great achievement for a healer to attend Schwartz's classes. She reveals that most of the teachers did not seem satisfied. Will already expected that and asks if she perhaps hid the fact that she gave him some advice. She answers that not exactly, since she does not talk with the teachers and there simply was no opportunity to mention it. He imagines that even Veronica is isolated from the others and says that he is happy, since, thanks to her advice, he has progressed very well and only regrets it if she ended up in a bad situation. Veronica says she does not mind that and, in fact, she is also grateful. Will does not know what she means and she explains that she had never heard of a healer with offensive magic and, because of that, she had always been curious to know what a combat healer would be like. He does not like at all that she draws her sword out of nowhere and she says that she wants to know his current level. The MC asks her to wait, but she warns that there is no waiting on the battlefield and, in the blink of an eye, advances and attacks with everything, forcing the MC to block with his dagger. In surprise, he feels her strength, which, to make matters worse, begins attacking from all directions. Will does not like that at all, since even by increasing his reaction speed he is barely managing to block and only then realizes that the teacher is not just fast as her movements are also refined. He knows there is a limit to forcing himself to keep up with her by enhancing his physical abilities, and that he might have a chance with the speed he has not yet shown. He decides to catch her by surprise and, enhancing his speed even more, attacks with everything toward her face. For a moment, she is surprised by this, but, holding her sword, she lowers herself and counterattacks, cutting his dagger in half. Then, she puts away her sword and admits she is surprised, since he forced her to use her sword magic. He does not understand whether that is good or bad. And she says that at first she believed he would be at the level of a healer who can fight like an offensive mage, but the skills he demonstrated are far above his age. She also mentions that she likes people with ambition and realized that he is not satisfied with just physical enhancement. He replies that yes, because no matter how much he removes the limiter, he still feels limited in what he can do. Veronica tells him not to worry, since healing magic can open many doors beyond physical enhancement, and believes that perhaps he lacks real combat and that ideas will arise after that kind of experience. She says this while asking whether he did not notice that with the fight he just had. He realizes that it is true and asks if he should continue having simulated battles against her. Veronica replies that it is not bad, but that there will be a field training for monster subjugation. That name catches his attention, since in his past life he also had that together with other academies: the Offensive Magic Academy Schwartz, the Healing Magic Academy Heilig, and the Sword Academy Silbern. Basically, the students of each academy will form groups that will accept real subjugation requests. He decides that in this new life, he will defeat as many monsters as possible to change the future, since it will be his first monster subjugation. Veronica notices this and comments that in order to participate, His abilities must be recognized in the academy selection exam, and that she even heard there is a student called a prodigy among that year's freshmen, and because of that, he should aim for first place among his classmates. The MC says he wants to know more, and she explains that around 100 people apply every year. He reflects that Heilig had so few candidates that anyone could participate, and that he even has many memories of that place and does not even know how his former instructor is doing. Veronica reveals that there are rumors that the prodigy has surpassed some teachers. So first place will not be easy. Will asks whether she happened to meet that student. She replies that no, since apparently there is a teacher personally taking care of that prodigy, and tells him not to worry, since she will help him with his training. The MC becomes extremely happy about that and thanks her. Sometime later, at the selection on the day of the exam, he imagines that time passed very quickly and knows that he prepared as much as possible. At that moment, someone calls out to him. It was the president of the Alliance of Academy of Magic and Academy Schwartz. He says that it has been quite a while since they last saw each other and apologizes for not having given him proper attention, even though he saved his granddaughter. The MC says it is not a problem since he went through difficulties at the beginning but is doing very well, and he also says that he has his eye on the selection exam at that moment. Someone appears laughing and asks if, by any chance, it is a joke to aim for first place. This is Bode, supervisor of field training. Will imagines that he met this guy in his past life. That is Bode, the Purple Lightning. He achieved heroic feats in the Great War and regrets not having good memories. The guy grabs him by the clothes and, overflowing with his aura, says that combat is a world of talent. Therefore, being a healer means having no chance whatsoever of winning. Will does not show any expression, and the president warns that the exam will begin soon. And therefore there is no reason to argue. Bode says that this is the way he educates others, and points out that the person beside him is serious. The MC immediately realizes that this is the prodigy he needs to defeat to reach first place. They stare at each other for a moment, and the old man laughs but points out that it is almost time and, therefore, they cannot stand around. Everyone goes inside until the arena is completely full. The students also take their positions, and the MC asks Erica if she will participate as well. She laments that if she does not participate, her allowance will be cut. Ulpies, on the other hand, keeps staring with all the hatred in the world. The president steps forward before everyone and says he is proud to have so many participants. He also reveals that the preliminary round they are about to carry out will have a set time limit, and everyone who remains standing will advance to the main event. The MC imagines that 100 people surviving in that cramped place will be problematic. No sooner does he think that than the old man activates his magic circle, knowing that everyone is thinking the place will be cramped, and creates another even more dazzling magic circle that covers the entire arena. The students do not understand what it is, since it looks more like a starry sky, and after Alnalam raises his staff, he teleports everyone to a forest. The MC realizes that it is precisely the forest behind the academy. The director then contacts everyone, revealing that he teleported them randomly. With that, they can avoid strong opponents or cooperate with acquaintances. However, the initial position depends on luck. Will is surprised by the ability to teleport so many people at the same time in an instant. The old man then officially declares the start of the exam. The MC immediately moves, going up to the top of a tree and concealing his presence. As he does so, he looks to the side and notices several people fighting. One student uses his stone golem, while a girl advances with her magic hammer. Lastly, another player activates his freezing breath in the middle of the battle. Will realizes it is a good opportunity to see several offensive spells and also be able to use some of them. The player with the golem defeats all the others and celebrates, since he knew he was that strong. However, the MC appears behind him, grabs his head, and uses his skill separation of consciousness, which makes the guy pass out on the ground. He imagines that he used the manipulation of the flow of life force to make the opponent faint, and, since the requirement is to hold the player's head, it is difficult to use, but he celebrates this technique that he developed in special training with Veronica. At that moment, he notices something and dodges several daggers that were thrown in his direction. He immediately recognizes what type of magic dagger it is and, taking a deep breath, looks at Ulpies and says that apparently the boy never learns. The blonde questions what he is talking about, since he is just trying to pass the test, and says that he will use all the power he has. The three of them prepare to attack. Ulpies uses his knife creation magic, his colleague uses poison enchantment magic, and lastly, The other guy uses shadow replication magic. Ulpi's tells him to get ready, since it is impossible to dodge so many poison daggers, and throws all of them without mercy. Will reflects that he could simply cure the poison as a healing agent does, but decides to do something different. Then, he uses his ability and all the daggers are blocked. They are startled by what they are seeing, since a stone golem suddenly appeared blocking everything. The MC imagines that healing magic only works on living beings. However, the golem has a mechanism that moves automatically using the caster's blood. So, if he gives it life force, he can simply control it. The golem charges at the boys, lands a solid punch on one of them, and sits on top of the other. Ulpi shouts indignantly, since his classmates were easily defeated. But the MC appears in front of him, grabs his face, and tells him to sleep peacefully. After that, he goes to fight other students using his golem, while watching from the top of the tree. At that moment, he is startled, since a colossal whirlwind appears beside them. He does not understand what happened until the whirlwind turns toward them, destroying everything in its path and leaving a trail of destruction, defeating the two people and the golem. The MC is surprised by this attack, until he looks to the side and realizes that the one responsible was the prodigy Sirius. He becomes thoughtful about whether he should test his trump card until he hears a voice telling everyone to stop. It is the principal thanking everyone for their efforts and announcing that the 4 remaining participants have passed the preliminary stages. In addition, the event will be the next day, and therefore the teleport will take them to rest. The MC looks closely at Sirius and realizes that the boy is also anxious, and thus everyone is teleported back in his dormitory. Will thinks about the main event and what he should do until then. Elsewhere, Ulpi's lackeys ask if they did not do enough. Since the MC is really strong and even healed them while they were unconscious, the blonde tells them to shut up and says that they come from weak noble families and, therefore, do not understand, and that being looked down upon by a healer is unacceptable. He imagines what would happen if his father found out, and the two boys, with little to say, simply turn to leave and tell Ulpi's to do whatever he wants alone, since they do not want to get hurt anymore. The guy becomes even more furious and says that he does not need to defeat Will with magic to eliminate him. Will notices that someone is knocking on his door and opens it, already having a bad feeling. It was Ulpi saying good night, and that it is a lovely night. The MC asks what he is plotting, and he replies that he just wants a peaceful conversation. He says that he honestly hates healers and did several things to get the MC expelled. Will remembers well, even though he counterattacked some of those things. Ulpi says he should have been direct from the beginning and, because of that, changes his expression and tells him to leave the academy at once. The MC says he even respects him for having the courage to say that, but questions why he antagonizes him so much. Ulpi's does not understand the question, since he does not need a reason to despise healers. That is because, in his family, anyone who is born a healer is sent to a remote family. He mentions his older brother who was like that and, even when he was mocked, simply laughed. That is because a proud offensive mage and a pathetic healer are completely different. The MC says that he understood the profound teachings of a prestigious noble family. Ulpi's thanks him for understanding and, once again, asks him to leave Schwartz Academy, since it is not a place for healers, and even asks whether he perhaps does not have a family he cares about. He does not like hearing that at all. And the boy explains that he asked his servants to investigate and discovered that the MC grew up with his younger sister, and that, if he gives the order, something bad could happen. The MC remains silent for a minute, grabs the idiot by the neck and throws him to the ground. Then he grabs his arm and warns that he has already decided to do what he is going to do. Ulpi's panics and begs him to stop, but it is too late and his arm is broken. The boy, out of breath, warns that there is no way he can get away with this, since if he shows that broken arm to anyone at the academy, no one will remain silent. The MC says it is not a problem since he will heal him completely, and after doing so, he breaks the arm once again, causing colossal pain to the idiot who can only tremble on the ground. However, Will does not stop there and heals the arm once again, and the boy, knowing what is going to happen, begs him to stop, but he says that one thing is messing with him personally, another thing is messing with his sister, and because of that he continues causing every imaginable pain, since it had to come to this point. Ulpi's cannot endure so much torture and concludes that Will is a demon in the skin of a healer and, because of that, guarantees that he will never get involved with him again, since otherwise he will suffer worse than death. The night goes on with a lot of torture until the MC says goodbye to the boy, asking him not to forget the promise he made to stop being a nuisance. He feels a sense of relief in his chest and that he will probably sleep very well. The next day, he is at the location of the main event and present. There are the director, the supervisor, Veronica, and other people. Will is excited about what will come next and is surprised, since Erica also made it and will be his opponent. She explains that she created walls of flames and a siege strategy and got lucky, since no one approached. The MC is surprised, since an offensive mage playing defensively is quite rare. In any case, he is still impressed that she managed to survive doing only that. Erica asks him to go easy on her, since they are friends, and says that she will aim for a better evaluation. The instructor orders the match to begin and she wastes no time and casts her fireball. Will blocks with his arm and is pleased, since that level of power can be easily healed. However, the flames become more and more powerful, and he soon realizes that something is wrong. She casts another fireball, but this time he does not allow himself to be hit and imagines that it is probably Erica's unique ability, since the flames do not go out at all. The fire, even if it is not that powerful, if it is not extinguished, is dangerous to be hit repeatedly. He remembers when he borrowed Erica's fireball and placed it on the salamander's tail, but apparently her unique ability had an influence. Only now does it make sense why people had difficulty crossing her wall of fire, since it is practically infinite. This reflects her persistent personality very well. The audience praises the girl and tells her to finish off the healer once and for all. Erica wonders if she can really defeat Will and asks him to surrender at once. The MC extinguishes the fire by increasing his production of healing magic and says that it is time to counterattack, but she does not like that at all and fires another fireball. He likes the idea of the fire not going out and decides to borrow the ability, since he will be able to use it to counterattack. With that said, he creates his flaming punch using her fire, and Erica, seeing that she is in trouble, gives up before being hit. She falls to the ground trembling and the judge announces that the winner is Will. He realizes that the life of a healer is not easy, since he is being booed even while winning. On the other hand, the crowd tells the girl not to give up, since she is an offensive mage. She feels sad, since she was being supported and still lost, but he tells her not to worry, since she definitely fought well and, while healing her hand, says that she still has a chance to pass. Erica is surprised by how caring he is, until Boat appears behind her, saying that something like that will not happen. She is startled by the big guy and he points out that healers are trash, and surrendering to trash makes you even more trash. Then, with his intimidating aura, he tells her to leave at once. Since she obviously failed, she panics and runs away. And Will asks if it is not inappropriate to speak to a student that way. He warns that he is the supervisor and, therefore, if the participants seem low-level, he needs to tell them. He turns around saying that only one person will pass that year. With that, someone else appears behind the MC. It was serious, since the next fight is his. The boy walks past him, but before that, Will asks if he thinks the same as the professor. He replies that, in the end, everything comes down to strength and that Boat is right because he is powerful. The MC says he understands. But before leaving, Sirius says that from what he noticed, the MC is not weak and, therefore, he prefers to be right. Will becomes serious and stops to think about Sirius, since he remembers that in his past life, he heard there was a terrifying offensive mage at his age. He was a boy who always had control of everything in the arenas, and kept winning his matches. Sometime later, the final match arrives between Will and Sirius. The MC says that apparently, he will only be acknowledged if he wins and guarantees that it will happen. Sirius says he understands, and the judge orders the match to begin. Immediately, the boy charges his magic and fires. Will manages to dodge and, enhancing his physical abilities, advances at full speed. The boy notices the approach and creates a vortex around himself that forces the MC to retreat. He realizes that he will not be able to get close easily, and the two stare at each other since the match is just beginning. Sirius prepares his attack and unleashes a powerful gust of wind. The MC realizes it is not a simple tornado since it is on a large scale, and knows that at that rate, he will be pushed out of the ring. Therefore, he decides to use one of his trump cards, and by touching the ground, makes a root grow that becomes a giant tree. Erica, watching, wonders if that is also him. Erica is able to use the healing magic, and realizes that her friend has grown even stronger. Some time ago, the MC used that power, and Veronica said that it was indeed impressive. He explains that he gave vital energy to the plants to make them grow rapidly, and learned it in the library from offensive magic that manipulates plants, and decided to try using it within his tactics. However, while saying that, he feels dizzy and almost faints, with Veronica catching him before he falls. She asks if he is alright, and he wonders if he ran out of magic, since the book did not say the technique was complex. She says that it is just as she thought. That is because destroying is easier than healing, and healing magic consumes much more power than offensive magic. He realizes that he will have to carefully choose when to use the technique. After remembering that, he realizes the time has come, since he never had talent for offensive magic and will have to make a move. And he will have to pick up for that disadvantage. Sirius makes another move and cuts the tree in half with his attack. Will is surprised by the diversity of attacks, since there is a large-scale violent tornado, blades that can even cut through a tree, and a fierce protection that strikes any target that approaches him. The MC realizes that this was expected from a prodigy. He clenches his fist and advances at full speed. Sirius warns that it is useless, since even if he tries, he will never succeed. But even so, he smiles. This catches Sirius' attention, who does not understand until he is struck in the shoulder by a piercing branch. He tries to understand what happened, and Will explains that the tornado cannot protect the underground, and the plant's roots have taken over a good part of the arena. Sirius looks frustrated at the supervisor, and the MC, seeing this, asks if he perhaps cares that much about Professor Bode, since the two seem completely incompatible. The prodigy replies that this is the end. This professor teaches him a lot, but Will questions whether that is the only reason, since he must be from a prestigious family, so he would not even need a professor. Sirius says that in his family, magical ability is everything, age and gender do not matter, and the strongest person becomes the head of the family. He finishes by saying that following his professor is the best way to become stronger. In addition, he says he will finish this at once, since his shoulder is hurting. The audience is surprised by the new ability, just like the MC, since he is facing a tornado so powerful that it materialized as a dragon. Without wasting time, the prodigy launches his attack, and Will reflects that lately he has been thinking that offensive mages have been picking on him a lot. But he knows that having talent does not make someone incredible or superior. This makes him say that more than ever he wants to defeat him. And Sirius, who did not understand, asks if he said something. And he replies that he was talking to himself, and places his hand on the ground to activate his best seed. A powerful tree begins to grow until it finally materializes Yggdrasil. He knows that normally a plant takes a long time to grow, but with his power that is different, since the more energy he puts in, the more it grows. The tornado dragon strikes the tree directly and splits it in half, besides destroying in several directions. Sirius sighs in relief since he thought it was easy. And after seeing a branch fall, he says, he is startled since the branch that is falling on him has become absurdly larger. The MC says that plant has exceptional vitality and a single branch can grow a lot. He worries since there will not be time to defend himself. And he is struck head-on by the tree. After being hit, the MC approaches with his dagger and Sirius admits his defeat. With that, Will is the champion. The people cannot believe that a healer actually won. The MC says he expected nothing less from a prodigy. And he replies that he was not good enough. However, Will denies it since it was definitely a great fight. Suddenly, someone shouts that they are disappointed. And a powerful purple lightning bolt strikes the tree, causing Sirius to faint from such power. Bode, who carried out the attack, appears destroying the tree, grabs him by the arm, and says that his disciple is a failure. And because of that, he will train him again. The crowd cannot believe such cruelty. The supervisor shouts to the crowd that the same goes for them, since he cannot accept a healer in first place. Immediately, everyone falls silent except for Will, who questions whether he is not going too far. He states that he won, and that does not mean Sirius is weak since it was a close fight. Bode, with his frightening gaze, orders him not to say a word. He turns around, throws Sirius to the side in the judge's direction, while saying that on the battlefield skill is everything. And if you lose, you will be treated like trash. Will does not like hearing that and says that he defeated Sirius. So he proved his skill, and being a healer does not mean being useless. He remembers that before regressing, Bode was so intimidating that he would grab his collar to pick a fight. However, the MC shouts that the divisions are separated by roles, and if they do not work together, humanity will perish. Bode hears this and says that his students stayed on the front line throughout the fight. Sirius had to buy time so that the guard troops could escape. However, they were all annihilated by lesser monsters while retreating. His students who returned injured ended up dying. He becomes enraged upon seeing that scene, and, furious at the healer's inability to save his students, shouts that, because of that, Sirius almost ended up dying. The MC imagines that Professor Bode was right. Being weak means that, in the end, you will not be able to do anything. But he knows that the monsters will soon dominate everything. When that happens, the people who are strong at that time cannot be selfish. He remembers all of this, and asks if, should he defeat the professor, he will acknowledge him. Bode likes this opportunity, and orders the judge to start the match, as well as to take Sirius away. He does not believe that the professor will fight seriously against a student. But Bode says that as supervisor he decides the rules. The judge looks to the side, and sees that Will is truly prepared. Then, seeing not many options, he shouts that there will be a special match between Bode and Will. The professor, without hesitating in the slightest, guarantees that he will prove how trash the MC is. Will worries, since his remaining magic is low, and he is facing a much more powerful opponent. He prepares to activate his magic. But Bode shouts that he is too slow and unleashes a powerful electric discharge at the location. He says he will teach the 3 reasons why his victory is absolute. First, distance is a great advantage. Second, speed prevents a weak opponent from acting. And lastly, he possesses the power to finish it with a single blow. He warns that it is game over, and asks whether he has already fainted. The MC emerges amid the smoke and questions where the so-called power that would finish it with a single blow is. The professor does not like this at all. And Will, who already knew the professor's tricks, knows that he must prevent the discharge from striking his body directly, since no matter how good he is, if the brain or the heart is hit, there will be no time to heal. Because of this, he created a blood circuit that conducts electricity easily. With the dagger embedded in his hand, he made the lightning pass through his arm and down his leg, minimizing the damage as much as possible until everything reached the ground. He knows that now is the time. But Bode says it is a shame since he barely managed to withstand a single attack. Will activates his physical enhancement, but when he tries to move, he cannot. He does not understand why he cannot connect energy directly to his body. And the professor, after approaching, says that the absolute rule is that anyone who receives his purple lightning will be paralyzed, unable to move. The MC knows that this is terrible and raises his dagger. But Bode says he does not want to play anymore and launches another powerful electric discharge, which makes Erica cry when she sees it. But the MC somehow manages to resist. He looks at Bode and imagines that the guy's unique ability is definitely too powerful and leaves no opening. But even so, he is determined to win. He places his hand on the ground to use his last trump card and activates his plant manipulation. The giant treasure tree grows in front of him. He reflects that that tree stores a large amount of water from the earth, and he can use it as a shield to disperse the lightning. However, Bode says that this is useless and launches another lightning strike even more powerful than the others, which completely cuts through the tree. After that, he asks if that was the last trick since he found it pathetic. However, as he passes by the destroyed tree, he notices that there are several mushrooms growing and shouts, questioning, "What the hell is this?" Will says he was not sure if it would work so well, since some plants and mushrooms have spores that grow faster with lightning, and such a violent attack would be perfect for that growth. This mushroom is the foam blower, and that is not its only characteristic. The professor still does not understand what the hell is going on, until he feels a strange sensation, since his body is numb. The MC sees this great opportunity and charges forward with everything, using his physical enhancement. However, Bode finds it amusing and lands a direct punch before being hit, making the MC vomit from the blow. The professor asks if he is an idiot since that body is obviously superior, and his unique magic manipulates electricity so he can strengthen his own body at an accelerated rate, to the point that paralysis is nothing. Will becomes frustrated, since even so, he will not be able to win, and Bode prepares to deliver the final blow. But before he does, Veronica appears telling him to stop since he is going too far. He sighs deeply and tells her not to interfere, since she is still a rookie on the team. She says that the match is already decided, and going any further would only hurt Will unnecessarily. Bode says it does not matter since the boy is a healer. She says that is true, but only in a scenario where he still has magical power to heal himself, and he clearly has no stamina left. The professor becomes furious at this argument, and, gathering energy, says that the MC simply has no fighting spirit. She also prepares herself when she sees that it is useless to argue with him. The two charge at each other but immediately stop when they feel a powerful presence ordering them to stop. It was the director who appeared flying in the arena, and he also says that the two of them fighting is completely meaningless. He descends into the arena and asks Bode to stop this. The professor does not see much else he can do and says that is fine. Alnilam turns to Veronica and apologizes for not having explained things properly. She does not understand what that means. The president clears his throat and shouts to everyone that with that, the main event of the entrance exam is concluded, and everyone must leave immediately. The audience obeys this order, and the MC continues healing himself with his magic. He thinks it is a shame that his magic has run out, and he did not want to lose. But the difference in strength is absurd. While he was thinking about this, Veronica picks him up in her arms and carries him outside. He feels embarrassed, asking what the hell she is doing, but she simply says that he did very well and tells him to rest. He is surprised by those words, and even knowing that he did well, he knows it was not enough. The night passed and he, among the people, keeps imagining that he witnessed the abilities of a first-class offensive mage. However, even with so many geniuses, he does not understand. Humanity perished, and because of that, he needs to become even stronger. The MC opens the door asking for permission, and the president says he was waiting. He says he is relieved to see the injuries treated, and will comments that after his magical power returns, he heals instantly. Alnilam comments that, in that case, participating in the field training will not be a problem. The MC is surprised and asks if he can really participate. He replies that obviously yes. After all, he was the winner of the event, and even Sirius and Erica also passed. He does not understand it well, since the professor had said that he was failed just like everyone else. The president asks him to relax, since this happens every year. After all, Bode says every year that everyone failed in order to awaken a sense of crisis in the students and, thus, reveal their true potential. That is because the field training involves danger. And that is the way he sees being a true teacher. The MC finds that scary way amusing, but reflects that it makes sense. That is because, in his past life, Bode fought on the front lines for humanity, and without a doubt was a hero who tried to save the world. And, even not agreeing with his actions, he knows the guy has his own pride. Alnilam says that at that moment will form a group with students from other academies, and will accept real monster subjugation requests. This makes him imagine that, 5 years from that moment in his past life, the monsters were the direct cause of humanity's destruction. Monsters originally referred to any creature that possessed magical power. Therefore, not all monsters are hostile to humanity. Sometimes they attack people, but that is behavior for their own survival. If everyone understood their ecology, they would be of great help to all. However, he is aware that within 2 years he will be a monster. In 2 years, the world will change. The red moon will appear, and the monsters exposed to that light will become violent. They will unite across species and will begin killing humans for fun. 2 years after that, the Demon King will appear, and humanity will quickly fall into a disadvantaged position. The offensive mages who were valued on the battlefield will die one after another. The healers who did not go to the front lines will eventually also be killed by the monsters. From that point on, it would be a matter of months until the monsters will be gone. Until the complete extinction of humanity. He knows he cannot let this tragedy happen. And, for that, he needs to become stronger than he was in his past life in order to counterattack the invasion of the monsters. In addition, he needs to discover the cause of the red moon that makes the monsters violent. The president sees his expressions and comments that the boy is truly determined and even has the same beautiful eyes as the day they first met. The MC asks if, by any chance, the teachers are caught. He is cautious about the field training. He replies that it is part of it but says he means something else. Will does not understand that suddenly. After that conversation, he goes outside and meets Erica and Veronica. Soon after, he sees Bode and Sirius arriving. Will takes the opportunity to tell Bode that he heard the guy is strict only because he cares about the students. The professor asks what he said, and replies that a weak piece of trash who could not even land a single attack should stop being arrogant. He realizes that the professor's attitude has not changed, and the guy walks straight past, telling them to work hard in the field and even thanking them for treating serious injuries. Will is happy to see a bit of Bode's true side, and Sirius also thanks them for being healed. He assures that with this training he will become even stronger, just as Bode instructed, strong enough to always survive. Will likes those words and asks to truly become even more powerful. The two bump their fists and the MC observes that having more powerful offensive mages will certainly help in the fight against stronger monsters. Veronica tells them to get going, and he agrees since it is already past time. They travel through the Dunkel forest, and Veronica explains that they will handle the request to subjugate the monsters of that forest. There will be 3 students from the 3 academies, forming a group of 4 people with a professor from one of the schools as support. Erica asks if the teams have already been decided. She replies that yes and says that the 2 of them are on the same team. Erica feels relieved since, among the professors, Veronica is the least intimidating. She says that Will's team will be quite special. But before she can give more details, they finally arrive at the location, and she says that the participants from Silburn are already there. He reflects that in his past life, he knew quite a few people from that academy, although they were not that well known. No sooner does he think that, than a girl calls out to him and, without wasting time, gives him a hug, since she had been waiting for the day she could meet him. He is confused by the hug, and apologizes since he has no idea who the girl is. She steps back after understanding the confusion, as they had not really talked properly back then, and explains that she is Marie Goldrin, granddaughter of Director Elnerum. He is surprised since he truly did not realize it was her. He asks how she is feeling, and she replies that she is perfectly fine, and regrets not being able to thank him at the time. He says it is no problem since her grandfather recommended him to Schwartz. Marie says she also wants to repay what he did. And since she had no talent for magic, she enrolled at Silburn Academy to improve her swordsmanship. Thanks to that, she placed first in the exam. He is surprised by that, and she laughs since in a way she does have talent with swords. He is so surprised that he even considers that she might be wrong. He says that she is a monster for having risen so quickly. Marie takes his hand and says she will be able to help him since they are on the same team. Suddenly, she pulls his arm, saying that someone from Heilig Academy has arrived and that they should greet him. Erica sees this and says the 2 of them seem to be having fun. Veronica agrees and says they should liven up their team as well. After the 2 approach the carriage, Marie calls out to Run and Turf. The MC is surprised since, if he heard correctly, she said Ren. The man steps out of the carriage and introduces himself as Renkaitos, professor at Heilig Academy. Will is happy to see him since he was his mentor in his past life and the best healer he ever knew. He is glad they are on the same team, even though the 2 of them do not understand the reason for his excitement. Turf also steps out of the carriage and Marie quickly introduces herself to him. The 4 Eyes becomes embarrassed upon seeing such a beautiful girl, until he notices she is holding hands with the MC. He does not like that at all and asks who the hell the MC is. Will introduces himself as a student from Schwartz Academy, and the boy says he was sure he was a mage from that place. The professor stretches and tells them to do whatever they want since he will just watch casually. The MC sees the professor walking away and runs after him to ask if he could perhaps call him mentor. Ren does not understand why he would do that, and the MC explains that he can also use healing magic but does not have a teacher, and because of that thought he could learn from him. Ren is surprised to learn that an offensive mage can use healing magic, but says that in reality he has heard about that before. The MC asks if by any chance that is a yes, and he says he can call him whatever he wants. Marie runs happily since she heard that Will is going to call him master, and because of that she wants to call him that as well. Erica sees all of this and says that the MCS group is working together. Very friendly in that subjugation, each group takes care of an area and will operate from a cabin as a base. The wolf's territory is a little deeper, so Will, Marie, and the professor will depart immediately. Since in real combat, healers do not go to the front line while they walk, Marie asks if a healer professor will really go to the front line. He replies that he is the supervisor and, because of that, will be present, and also warns that he does not like being formal. She says she liked knowing that, since she will not hold back. The MC is not sure if he understood well what she meant by not holding back. She smiles at the goblins that are approaching and, after grabbing her sword, slaughters them with a single strike on each monster. After finishing, she celebrates on top of the pile of dead goblins. Will is surprised since he had two different impressions of what Marie was like. She keeps killing the monsters that keep appearing, and Will remains surprised, since her sword skill is enormous, and he believes that maybe the girl alone could clear the place. However, Marie soon gets tired when she sees that many monsters are appearing. Ren, who is watching, comments that the director's granddaughter is impressive but has many openings, since she is excellent at attacking but weak when surrounded. Having said that, he asks the MC to cover her, and he finally realizes that he is going to fight monsters for the first time. A bizarre goblin appears, and Will feels uneasy for a moment seeing that. The professor places his hand on his shoulder and tells him to. The knife is working against the monsters since it was a knife that Veronica gave him as a gift, and it is extremely sharp. Marie is impressed with Will, since he is skilled with a knife and has incredible explosive power. However, the professor appears, touching both of them, and says that it is enough for a first day, and asks them to return. Marie feels strange since she simply became lighter. The MC explains that this is thanks to their mentor. That makes him remember his past life. If one were to measure healing magic, there would be indicators such as the severity of the wounds that can be healed and the types of diseases. But Ren's strong point is recovery speed, since he heals so casually that the person does not even realize they were healed. Those who are not healers do not understand how incredible that is, and he once even asked him about it, but the professor said he could not do flashy things like that, and that, as long as people are healed, they will be healed. That is what matters. The MC remembers all of that and says that even though the world does not realize it, Ron is the best healer in the world. Later at night, in the cabin, the professor says that that day everyone earned a good score to pass. However, Turf does not agree, since everyone returned unharmed. And, because of that, he did nothing. Ren raises his bowl and says that he did, since he is providing healing through the meals, and that is also a healer's job. And he feels proud, since the flavor of that food has a bit of his seasoning. Marie says that he is truly incredible, since besides being a healer, he also knows the front lines well. He explains that the front lines have more wounded, and if he treats people there, his knowledge eventually increases. Turf adds that the professor travels all the time to various places, and because of that, does not teach regularly at the academy. Marie is surprised by this and asks if it is not dangerous. He replies that he has confidence in his own ability to escape. However, the MC disagrees in his thoughts, since he knows that Ren never ran away even once when it came to saving people. And he knows that it was a great blow to humanity to lose the professor. That is because he was not only an excellent healer, but also one of the few who truly knew what to do in real combat. He sees the professor smiling as he always did and decides that in this life he will never let him die. And so the night passes. At the same time, in the middle of the forest, several monsters are gathered, and one of them is holding the power of the red moon, which is leaving all the goblins present in a state of violence, along with another extremely more powerful monster. The next day, the group set out once again to subjugate the goblins. The previous day, they shared a lot of information to improve their teamwork, since at that pace they would finish the mission quickly. However, they were walking calmly until the professor says that they will not survive. They will return. Marie does not understand why, since they have not defeated any monsters that day, and the MC asks if there is something ahead of them. He replies that it is the opposite, since there is no sign of anything. He also explains that goblins have a strong sense of territory, and when something strange approaches, they advance as they did the day before. But they have already walked all that distance and not a single monster appeared, and he says he is worried about that, and warns once again that they will return to regroup with the other team. Marie says that Veronica's group probably has a base near that place, and the professor agrees and says they will go there. They change direction, and the MC does not like that at all since things are strange. After getting close to the location, they push aside the bushes, and the MC is startled to see Erica tied to a tree trunk. Immediately, Marie runs to save her, but steps on a trap, and is pulled into the ground. Will shouts for her, but she thinks quickly, and using her sword, drives it into the edge of the hole, managing to save herself in time. The MC reflects on the trap, and on them having used Erica as bait, but the professor shouts that something is approaching. At the same instant, several arrows come flying toward them, but Will reacts in time and destroys them all. Then a giant legion of goblins appears, and even with Marie climbing out of the hole, they realize that they are completely surrounded. Will panics since the monsters are acting intelligently, hunting the humans. And this is exactly like the monsters after the Red Moon. He knows that this is wrong, since this should not happen for the next 2 years. Suddenly, Erica lets out a groan, and the MC feels relieved, since she is alive. He gathers his magic since he gained combat power exactly for that moment. Marie says she does not even know where to begin, but Will tells her to leave it to him, and, using his magic on the ground, she is able to save herself. He says that she does not need to be on the front lines, and mentions that when archers position themselves behind melee combat units, it is easy to exploit openings. Marie gathers her energy, since she understood the message, and launches a large-scale attack to break the monster's formation. After finishing, he still asks what they thought of his total firepower. However, a monster appears behind him, but the MC shows up and takes it down. The professor says he will rescue Erica, and the MC asks him please to do so. But at that moment, he feels a bad sensation, and remembers that the effects of the Red Moon include making monsters violent, but they also make monsters of different species work together. Upon seeing the monster that appeared, the MC quickly realizes it is an ogre hidden underground, and becomes worried, since from that distance he will not be able to arrive in time, and he cannot believe that the tragic fate that happened to him is over. The ogre is also worried that the incident will happen again, and even faster. The ogre wastes no time and attacks with his flaming fist. However, Ren activates his ability and dodges the attack with absurd speed, and even finds it funny that he was almost hit. The MC seeing this wonders whether it was physical enhancement, and whether his mentor really used healing magic in an offensive way. The ogre does not waste time and attacks once more, but he dodges and jumps onto the monster's back, and, using his ability on the target's head, puts the giant to sleep. Will runs over to him to comment on what he witnessed, and he replies that a good mentor also learns from his disciple, since he only thought about using healing magic offensively at that moment. The two find this incredible and quickly untie Erica so they can leave. The MC takes the opportunity to ask whether, with the professor's strength, he could not eliminate all the goblins. He looks at the monsters and tells him to stop being an idiot since he only put the orc to sleep and, even though it is a monster, he has no intention of hurting him. Having said that, he runs off since he knows that when the orc wakes up, he will be feeling great. The MC realizes that his mentor definitely has not changed. They continue fleeing, and the goblins just stand there watching, since they gave up chasing them after suffering many losses. After getting far enough away, the MC comments that it should be enough. Then Ren begins his treatment with healing magic. And soon Erica wakes up, not understanding where she is. Will starts by apologizing for asking something right after she woke up, but questions what happened and why she was alone. She panics since she did not even know she was alone, and says that the subjugation the previous day went well. But whenever she lets her guard down, something bad happens, and, when she woke up in the morning, Professor Veronica had left and only left a note behind saying, "Await my return." It turned out that the group argued about it, and the two team members went after the professor, leaving her alone. The MC does not like this at all since it is typical of Erica to say no. But the situation was serious, and the girl could have died. This makes him furious since no group was prepared for what happened, as the monsters are on another level in their violent form. Erica continues her explanation, saying that she entered the forest and smelled something sweet, and after that, she does not remember anything else except waking up beside them. The professor thinks this is terrible since apparently the goblins used some kind of sleep-inducing drug. In addition, they set up a trap and work together with an orc, and he definitely has no idea what is happening, but says this is not the time to think about it, since they need to regroup with the rest of her team. After walking for some time, Erica says they are about to arrive, but she becomes completely terrified when she sees that her base has been completely destroyed. Marie says she researched beforehand, and discovered that goblins are very territorial, which means they normally do not leave their territory, so a base far from them should mean it is safe. Having said that, she does not understand why all of this is happening. The MC reflects that these attacks against humans are definitely a characteristic of the monsters after the Red Moon, and does not know how to explain it. Rin notices that there are no signs of a fight, and believes that the other two fled somewhere, and because of that, asks them to split up since they need to find them, and for the three of them to find turf to leave the forest. In addition, they should not assume that their base will be safe, and because of that, they must stay alert. Immediately, they return to the base and shout to see if turf is okay. The boy, not understanding anything, asks why they came back early since lunch is not even ready yet. Marie feels relieved to see him safe, and tells them to hurry since they need to leave soon. However, he notices something and says it is a little too late since they were being followed. Erica becomes completely terrified by the number of monsters in front of them. Will says he had been reflecting on how pathetic he has been, and they do not understand what he means. He states that he firmly believes the three of them can defeat those monsters. He only warns that against a huge horde, teamwork will be crucial, and tells Marie not to advance too much like she did before, since she must land her blows safely. He summons his wooden golem to handle the vanguard. Then he asks Erica to stop the goblin's advance using her flame. She worries since she was caught so easily before and will not be very useful, but Will says that is fine since her flames are extremely useful. She fills herself with confidence and fires her flames in all directions, creating a massive wall of fire that forces the goblins back. She celebrates for having succeeded, since that way the large number of goblins will not be able to attack all at once. However, Will is startled to see one of the more powerful monsters walking through the fire as if it were nothing. He knows that monster is definitely on a different level from the goblins, and orders his wooden golem to advance. Then, Erica sets the summon ablaze to grab the orc more efficiently, as the monster begins to burn in flames. Marie takes advantage of the opening and lands a sword strike that sends the monster flying. The two girls celebrate the teamwork and the MC admits it was very good. However, it was not enough since the monster is regenerating from the cut it took. Marie comments that they probably need to keep attacking until the monster can no longer regenerate, and the MC worries since he does not know whether there is a limit to the orc's regeneration and, because of that, there is no guarantee they will be able to defeat it just yet. Marie is forced by attacking continuously, and he believes there must be a proper method. Suddenly, they shout that something is approaching and, in fact, it looks like a laser heading toward Will, who blocks it thinking it was some kind of magic. But in reality, it was just a goblin. That is because the orc is using the smaller goblins as cannonballs. The MC does not like that at all since it will be problematic. And one of them flies toward Erica. But Marie steps in front with her sword and bats the monster away as if it were a baseball. Then, she tells Will to do what he is thinking since she realized he came up with a plan, and, because of that, she will handle the defense. Immediately, the MC advances since he can leave the house's protection to her and imagines that the goblins in general can be blocked by the wooden golem and by Erica's flames, and the goblins that are thrown will be dealt with by Marie. Therefore, all that remains is to defeat the ogre. The monster sees him approaching and attacks, but he dodges and counterattacks in several directions. However, this only makes the monster even more furious to the point of roaring, but that only creates an opening for Will to approach from behind and use his healing ability, Vital Fury. The monster's heart collapses, and its entire body begins to be destroyed until it is finally finished, falling stiff to the ground. Will imagines that it was only necessary to force the ogre's regeneration to work excessively to the point of losing control. However, the ogre is completely exhausted and completely exploding from the inside, and that it will not be able to regenerate from that. Having said that, he feels more relieved since now all that remains are the smaller goblins. He goes around killing the goblins just like Marie, who clears the battlefield. He feels relieved that they succeeded. Erica gets tired, and Marie celebrates since it was a complete victory. The MC agrees since everyone's coordination was excellent, and somehow they managed successfully. But he asks them not to celebrate too soon, since it is not the end, because there are more monsters in that place. No sooner does he say that than a giant tornado appears in the middle of the forest, and even seeing it from afar, they conclude that it is serious ability. Will says that if they head toward the tornado, they will be able to regroup with the other teams. Indeed, the prodigy is there, and after the team arrives, the boy says he is happy to see everyone well. Suddenly, someone draws their attention. It was Bode, questioning whether the group's composition is not strange, since he does not even see their instructor. No sooner does he say that than Ren appears with the two students who were missing, and immediately the MC runs to him since everyone is fine. The professor replies that yes, since it was convenient for a tornado to have formed in the middle of the forest, which basically showed the way, and says he is also happy that everyone did very well, and firmly believed that no one would get hurt. Everyone is happy with this outcome. Bode says they are acting as if the atmosphere were calm, but he feels that someone is missing. The MC says that Veronica is indeed missing, and the supervisor says he is not particularly worried about her. But they cannot retreat, leaving someone behind. Ren suggests staying behind, watching over the students, and that those who are good at acting alone should split up to search. Bode agrees with this plan, and asks Will and Sirius to hunt for the professor. They agree, and the MC enters the forest, and knows that he has improved his hearing to sense the presence of living beings, and even though it is not practical enough to distinguish them, he will use it anyway in addition to searching the old-fashioned way. No sooner does he think about that than he spots the professor, who by the way looks perfectly fine. But after Veronica turns around, he notices that she is holding a red stone, which by the way is overflowing with a malevolent aura. He is shocked to see that and worries whether that red light is the same as the red moon. The girl puts the stone in her pocket and asks what he is doing in a place like that. He explains that he was looking for her since the monsters went berserk. So the field training ends there. Veronica says she understands and walks past him asking to leave, but Will shouts to wait and questions the stone she was holding. She replies that it was nothing, but he does not accept that, since he knows something is going on. And, moreover, she disappeared for a long time, leaving the other students behind. Then, trembling, he asks once more about the stone, but she only takes a deep breath and, holding her sword, apologizes since she cannot be very strict with her methods, and, because of that, it would help a lot if he stayed quiet about it. The MC is startled by her reaction, and the girl calls for them to leave once again, also emphasizing not to worry since she will not do anything bad. After that, he could not say anything else to her, since he was powerless before his teacher, and after walking they finally reach the group. They go to the carriage and, while traveling, he can only think that he never had reasons to doubt his teacher, his friend from his past life. With that, the field training ended and the MC laments not having been able to sleep properly, since he cannot stop thinking about whether Veronica is involved with the red moon. While he was walking, something catches his attention, since Veronica is talking to someone at the exit gate. He decides to use his presence concealment and approaches to find out what is happening. The man comments that he received her request to leave the academy and asks where she is going. She simply walks past him and says it is personal business. Will finds it strange and believes it may have something to do with the red stone and knows he has no choice but to follow her. She arrives in the city and Will continues following. Only then does he stop to think that, If he is wrong about what he is thinking, he is nothing more than a stalker for what he is doing. However, he cannot afford to worry about misunderstandings. Not if there is a chance to learn something about this tragedy and also to clear Veronica's name. Only then does he realize that it is the first time he has returned to this place after coming back. After he graduated from the Academy of Healing, monster activity had already become a major problem and he was sent to battlefields everywhere and is almost certain that he was in this city at that time. Immediately he remembers something else when he sees Veronica buying something from a vendor. More specifically, honey bread. That is because in his past life the two of them used to eat it together. At the time, he took only one bite and said it was amazing. She agrees, and it is no wonder the place is a success. He explains that he is an instructor, so he never used to go out and much less buy food that way, and asks if perhaps being born into a family of merchants made her eat this kind of food all the time. Veronica replies that yes, but it goes beyond her upbringing since it is a personal rule to stop at a bakery whenever she sees one. When she was still a child, she used to accompany her parents on business trips, and even as an adult, she would always go to battlefields all over the world and thus met many people. She also emphasizes that she almost never sees most of those people a second time. And even if she does, they always change so much that they seem like different people. That is why she does not want to regret it when that happens and has forbidden herself from saying, "I'll leave it for later." He says that makes sense since she always says things directly, and she finds it amazing because she had not realized he saw her that way, and says that she also does not know when she will die. The MC asks her not to say something so depressing, but she reinforces that she is not being pessimistic since she does not plan to say anything. She does not want to die anytime soon and is just living her best. Then she touches his body and with all her charm asks if he will protect her. The MC, embarrassed, replies that he definitely will. After remembering all of this, Will feels a pain in his chest since in the end he let Veronica die, and this time he swore that he would protect her. That is why he needs to know the truth with his own eyes. He continues following the professor regardless of where she goes until he realizes that she is heading to an obviously suspicious place. He decides to further strengthen his disguise since he does not know if Veronica will be safe. She enters through the opening in the bars that leads to the sewers, and he keeps following until he finally stops when he hears a voice. The hooded man apologizes for calling her to a place like that, but since the matter is important he had no other choice, and after removing his hood asks her to show the item they had discussed. She puts her hand in her pocket and shows the red stone, which startles the boy, who upon taking it in his hand celebrates how wonderful that item is. He says that she definitely has talent and that he will always believe in that since now their desire with the church is more aligned. Then he finishes by saying that they are now closer to the red moon. The MC is startled when he hears those words since he feared the worst because he is connected to the red moon, but he does not know what the church has to do with it. However, at this moment his concealment magic ends and immediately the two of them sense his presence. Will cannot believe that his magic ended at the most crucial moment of his life, and Veronica without thinking twice advances toward him, freezing his heart when he sees this. He shouts for Veronica and she in front of him says that apparently in the end he had been followed by him. She is blocking a giant serpent that attacked him. The man approaches saying that she should have come alone and finds it sad, since their agreement was broken and he had truly thought he could gain a new comrade for their order. She kills the monster and warns that she will say it was an accident. He feels relieved since he had jumped to conclusions and says that in that case they just need to dispose of the witness and the order will gladly accept that. However, she points her sword, refusing the proposal. Since she is in that place to investigate and has no intention whatsoever of sacrificing a precious student. The MC apologizes since he needs to understand what is happening. She says it was a mistake not to have explained earlier. So she explains that on the day they were in the forest, she had felt something strange. That was when she found the monsters in a state of fury. Another thing she also found was a red stone on the ground. She picked it up in her hand and decided to imbue a little magic into it. And when she did that, the stone emitted an even stronger light. At that moment the grape-haired man appeared, saying that he did not imagine he would find a companion of faith in that place and believes it was divine guidance and proof of a mission that had been granted to him. She questions who the hell he is, and the guy says that he even wants to reveal many things but has some rules. Basically, if she wants to know more about them and about the stone, there are two conditions. First, she must keep the stone shining using magic. And the second condition is that she must not tell anyone about this and must go alone to the place they will designate in order to test her reliability. And he already apologizes for putting her to the test in that way and truly hopes that she will become one of them. After telling all this, she says that she had intended to investigate as an infiltrator and, because of that, had intimidated him in the forest, saying that something bad would happen if he did not drop it. Will becomes depressed since those words alone would not explain enough, and she apologizes since he is right. In any case, the MC says that he is truly relieved that she is not a bad person. The guy says that he is even sadder since apparently she had no intention of joining the order and, because of that, throws the stone toward the water and says it is a shame to have to discard someone so talented. Will does not understand why the guy is throwing into the water the stone he received. The light of the item becomes increasingly intense and the monsters of that place begin to enter a state of fury. Because of this, several serpents emerge from the water and the guy finds this magnificent since even among the members of his order, those who enter a state of fury are rare. The MC observes these serpents, which are actually water dragons, and knows that they are very strong. Veronica says there are 8 in total and Will asks to take half. However, she advances and says it will not be necessary since with her magical attack, Wind Assault, she managed to cut off the heads of all the monsters in an instant. The MC is surprised by such skill, although he expected nothing less from her. However, things do not end there since the monsters keep attacking even without their heads and she is forced to dodge. She does not believe that there is anything problematic since as far as she knew, no matter how strong a generation is, it should die instantly after losing its head. And even so, the monsters recovered their heads as if it were nothing, and that is something no healing magic could do. The MC also prepares for battle since he sees that there is something wrong and even imagines what it could be. The dragon lunges at him, but Will dodges and seeing an opportunity, lands a direct hit with his dagger. But as he thought, the body is too soft to penetrate. He retreats since he thought of something and shouts to the professor that there is something he wants to test and, because of that, asks her to please stay back. She steps away but asks him not to overdo it. The MC says he will overdo it just a little and activates his physical enhancement. Limiter release with all his strength. He grabs onto the dragon's head and pulls the monster upward, revealing that it is actually another much larger monster. Veronica finally understands what it is, since she was finding it strange that the monsters were not dying after having their heads cut off, because they were not heads but tentacles. This monster is the Octodraco. The man finds it incredible that a boy saw the dragon's true form in an instant and finds it truly marvelous. He says that the order does not seek combat ability and says that he is nothing more than a nuisance. He also knows that at this rate he will be going against the order's will and, because of that, introduces himself as Allroot and assures that he will take the appropriate measures with his own hands. Immediately, the MC asks Veronica to take care of the monster. He says this because he is aware that her magic sword is very effective against the monster's soft body. The professor supports this decision, but says she could not put a student in danger. Yet even so, he takes her hand and activates his physical enhancement. Then he says he will return right after defeating the villain and asks her to please him. He says that he will stay safe. She sees confidence in his words and says it is fine and asks him to be careful about one specific thing. Since she believes the guy is something else, he realizes at that very moment what it is about and, before she finishes speaking, he moves forward since he understood the message. Allroot is surprised by this speed and says he will play as well. Will prepares his dagger and attacks with all his strength, but the guy blocks with his staff. The MC keeps attacking and the guy keeps defending, and finds it marvelous since such a young boy is very talented. However, when he retreats, he finds it strange since he was scratched on the cheek and, realizing it hurts a lot, says it is not a problem since he can simply heal it. Before that, what Veronica wanted to say was that the redstone had a monoflow with the wavelength of offensive magic. And, in other words, Allroot is a healer who can fight just like him. Will becomes intrigued and asks if he created fighting methods using healing magic. The gray-haired man replies that obviously not since he would never think of such things and, holding his staff, fires another attack since it is one of the things he learned within the mysterious order. The MC is surprised since, apparently, even in his other life there were methods for healers to fight. And he did not know that this makes him furious since everything could have been different. Allroot, seeing that Will has a lot of talent, says he is envious and would love for him to meet a certain person from the order. Because of that, he asks if he would be interested in joining. However, he replies that it can only be a joke since he would never become one of them and, curiously, states that this would not happen even if he were reborn 1,000 times. Allroot realizes that this is not a joke and says it is a pity. Then, in the blink of an eye, he approaches since he has no other choice but to eliminate him. Will blocks the first attack and realizes that the physical enhancement when used is quite powerful and thinks about the cult this guy belongs to, about healing magic and offensive magic, and that there are simply many things he still does not fully understand. On the other hand, he can use his opponent to answer most of his questions and thus prevent a tragedy. He counterattacks using the dagger and, seeing an opening, lands a solid kick that sends Allroot flying. The gray-haired man is surprised by that strength and admits that at that rate he might even lose. Then he raises his staff and says that the sect is supporting him. Using the red stone he activates body enhancement and his eyes turn red and his body also begins to mutate, making his arm look like that of a giant monster. The MC quickly realizes that this goes far beyond the normal physical enhancement of healing magic and therefore asks who the hell taught that kind of magic. Allroot replies that it was all thanks to the cult's teachings and explains that he always lived carelessly without thinking about life. He was also hired as a healer by a certain magic squad and always worked following the orders of some arrogant guy. So, since he knows that the MC is also a healer, he believes that one day he will understand all of this. Since the world is full of people who are not worth saving, that was when the cult handed him the red stone as a source of power. He finishes by saying that it was from that moment on that his life began to shine. However, Will says that even if he does not know whether the guy has truly realized that what he is doing is wrong, he moves forward. Since if things continue like this, many people will die. Allroot blocks with his mutant arm and says that it is all right since the sect had already mentioned this. He says this and throws the MC against the wall with all his strength. Then he declares that justice has prevailed and there is nothing that can be done. Will does not accept any of this and remembers that in his past life both his master and Veronica died, all because of this guy. Even with his arm destroyed, he stands up and Allroot questions what he will do without even being able to use his arm. He barely says that and is startled since the MC completely out of nowhere starts punching his face and leaves his new arm like a leaf. The gray-haired man simply does not understand how the injuries were healed instantly, and has no idea what kind of healing this is. The MC, tired of all this, overflows with all his energy, saying that he will pay with a pain worse than death for everything he has done. Allroot charges, guaranteeing that this time he will kill him instantly without giving him a chance to heal, and Will does the same. Then the two clash their fists. Allroot begins to feel intense pain to the point of screaming, but the MC tells him not to scream yet since it has barely begun, as he has not completely defeated him yet. Then with a powerful punch he lands a direct hit on the guy's chin, sending him flying like a ping-pong ball, hitting the sewer ceiling and falling to the ground unconscious. He approaches and warns that they will continue the conversation later and remembers that Veronica is also in battle. However, at that moment she was channeling her energy, and after doing so unleashes a single attack so powerful that her body would not stop overflowing with her sword magic. She finishes the monster into pieces and asks if he happened to finish as well. In addition, she apologizes since the monster had absurd regeneration, and that is why it took longer. He says that everything is fine and that they will wake up Allroot since they are excited for the guy to reveal everything he knows about the cult and the red stone. That's all, folks. If you enjoy the video, subscribe and hit the bell. Thanks.